Hey, good evening, Wixman Ray. It's Monday, May 11th, 2026. It is almost 7 o'clock here Central Time, 6:50 to be precise. Um, so that's the time. We're looking at our RGB weather satellite here. You can see the western half of the country really dry with that ridge kind of taking over. We do have a few clouds up across the northern plains and back into Wyoming and Montana and back there. Maybe a few showers up here in the northern Rockies if it is hitting the ground, but it's pretty dry out there. But nothing coming out of these clouds moving over the plains here. This is our next frontal system gathering strength, already starting to bring some storms, showers and storms up into North Dakota and Minnesota today or this evening. Um, it doesn't look like much right now, but it'll gather some moisture. It's kind of starved for moisture since the Gulf is cut off due to this system down here. So since we're talking about that, we actually got two separate waves. We have our upper level wave moving across this. It's actually back here in Texas. Typically, the upper level troughs are um, kind of on the back edge of where the clouds and precip is, and so all that moisture is out ahead of it. And then we got another upper wave up here moving across the east coast with this frontal system that's pushed off into the Atlantic now. So we got this. We'll call it a cold front moving through the Atlantic that has just moved off out of the northeast U.S. It trails back into the Carolinas. I think there's a few showers down there, and then quite a bit of cloud cover across the south here. Some showers. I think there's a couple thunderstorms back here. Um, Although I think most of the activity is out over the Gulf here under this mass down here just south of the Gulf Coast there. And then we got a few thunderstorms across Florida there with the influence of this frontal system and this upper level wave. Um, yeah, so really we just got three systems, and this one's pretty much going to be out of the picture tonight. So we just have these two left, and this one will be gone over the next 24 to 36 hours as it moves out to the east. Um, we see some low clouds back here in Ontario and Quebec, and that's kind of spilling over into parts of the Northeast. We have a few showers up across the Northeast, extending down into New York and Pennsylvania. Yeah, so other than this system across the east and the one across the northern plains developing, it's pretty quiet across most of the continental United States right now. So that's our satellite view there. We'll look at our surface obs. We'll start up here in the northern plains and then kind of work around. So you can see some showers. That looks like a thunderstorm there, kind of northwest of Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Is there any others around there? Rugby is to the west of it. Cando. So these little small towns up in North Dakota. Like I mentioned yesterday, a little gusty winds around this low too. It looks like they're gusting up 30, 40 miles an hour. Um, Even a little bit higher back here, maybe some 45, almost 50-mile-an-hour gusts back into Montana and parts of the Dakotas on the cold side of the system. But as I said, most of the precip is still up in Canada. Got a little bit of showers spilling over into Minnesota too. So that's that system. As we head southward, it's getting pretty hot out here, 80s and 90s across South Dakota and Nebraska. A little bit cooler out here in the 60s and 70s out in Iowa, and then as you get, we still have that cooler air across the Great Lakes with 40s and 50s back over here. We'll go back this way so we don't forget about the west. So yeah, you can see it's getting pretty warm out there. It's 71 at Seattle, 80 in Portland, 85 in Medford. So pretty warm out there in the 80s and 83 at Boise, 90 in Salt Lake. So it's getting hot out west. 90 in Elko, 91 in Reno, and it's 104 in Las Vegas. So getting real hot down there. 107 in Phoenix. LAX is 66. They get that nice cool wind off the ocean. But like for Fresno and Bakerfield, it's 98, so they're close to 100 out there in the Central Valley. 99 there at China Lake. I think that's a naval base there. Um, and then even San Francisco is nice in the 60, 68. The winds are a little bit gusty out of the northwest, about 20 miles an hour. Yeah, so yeah, the story is hot, except right along the coast where it's always cool because you got that perpetually cold Pacific upwelling waters. The upwelling is what causes the cold. That's because the jets, or the not the jet, but the ocean stream, whatever that's called, the across the ocean that comes from the north on that for the Pacific on that side of the U.S. there. 80s out there in New Mexico, 86 in Albuquerque, 82 in Albuquerque, so getting pretty hot. Even up in northern, it's 80 in Flagstaff, 82 at the Grand Canyon National Park. Yeah, so the heat's on. Not too bad in Texas. They got some 70s and 80s, so it's not as hot as it can be down there. So, and then as we enter like far eastern Texas into Louisiana, quite a swath of rain, some thunderstorms looks like going on back here across parts of Louisiana into southern Mississippi. Definitely some moderate to heavier rains underneath some of those, but I'm sure there's some claps of thunder and all that. Pretty good mass of thunderstorms over the Gulf there. Looks like a couple isolated showers and storms over southern Georgia there. And there's kind of what looks like the leftover of that front. There's a few showers and thunderstorms, mainly off coast there, just near the coast there, so south of Savannah. So, and then as you go down into Florida, showers and thunderstorms, mainly in the southern half. As you get south of Orlando, there was a couple up here farther north, but they're right along the coast. So yeah, so it's getting warm and humid. It's in the mid 80s down there in South Florida with some good humidity. So in them showers will just bring more humidity to them, I think. So yeah, that's the major storm besides the one up that's moved off the northeast. Yeah, and as we move north, nice across the southeast this evening at almost 8 o'clock at night. It's in the 70s back here. Farther north is still chilly, 50s and 60s across the mid-Atlantic down into North Carolina. Um, and even up into Pennsylvania northward, 50s, a couple 60s here and there, but you can see them showers. Nothing too heavy, but enough to wet the ground here and there. So, yeah. And then you got some 40s lingering back here in parts of the northeast too. So still chilly out there. It should start to warm up later in the week. Um, Earlier, the models were saying Thursday, Friday. Now they've kind of backed off to maybe more of the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I looked at the temperatures. We'll go over those since we're kind of whizzing through this, since there's not a lot of weather. I didn't cover this too much, but 50s up in Michigan, 60s for the most part across Iowa, Indiana, Illinois, 60 and 70. Same deal in Tennessee and Kentucky. So not that hot out there. And the humidity levels are really low. The only place you really got humidity is along the Gulf Coast here, not along this frontal boundary here that's kind of stalled out across near the Gulf Coast anyway. So that's where all the humidity is really. Elsewhere, it's pretty dry across most of the U.S. Pretty pleasant. All right, so we'll move on to our model forecast here. That's in the future, a couple days or so, but so here we go. We'll just go this is through midnight here, like we like to do. So low pressure, kind of just north of the border into whatever province that is in Canada, Manitoba, I think. I don't know. One of those, Saskatchewan. Not sure which one. I can't tell where the border line is. Maybe it's right there. Can't really tell. There's a borderline there, but they're real faint. There's one. This might be Saskatchewan, so maybe this is Manitoba, I think, is what the province is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so yeah, you can see there's still a little bit of breezes coming across the plains, from West Texas, into Kansas and Iowa and out into Minnesota, and then even behind it, like we saw. So it'll be breezy tonight. Some areas will be windy, especially on the backside of the front with the cold air. So we got a cold front kind of invading through the northern plains there. Not a lot of precip along it, most because there's not much moisture to speak of, but where all the dynamics are around the low pressure, that's where we're seeing a majority of the precipitation and thunderstorms. That wave that we saw down here across the south, there's the showers and thunderstorms, and then we got the front that extends back up through the off the east coast there. Um, I was going to show you the upper level dynamics here, just to show you what's going on. So yeah, so we got those three systems. So this one, like I said, is along the east coast, but all the precipitation's now out to the east of it. Like I told you, the the upper level troughs always lag behind, so they're kind of what's clearing and forcing all that moisture away from the area. And here's the one that's down over Louisiana and parts of the south there, and there's that other system up in the northern plains. There's our big ridge. You see a little moisture or a little bit of energy down here. This is a sign of what's going to start coming up, and then there's another one that's way off the chart here that'll come in here in the next couple days here. I think Wednesday was when it starts moving in. So yeah, but we'll see that shortly. So as we move through, we'll go all the way through tomorrow evening. So this system moves to the south and east, so that'll put the front somewhere out here across the Midwest into the Great Lakes and back in through like Missouri back here. And then this thing's gone. Um, so we kind of see this will help, except for maybe Maine, where they still see a little bit of the influence of that low. There might be a couple showers up there, and they'll still keep cooler air. It'll start to warm up a little bit, especially like across the Great Lakes, just temporarily out ahead of this frontal system. But then this front will kind of reinforce the cold air as we go through Thursday and Friday. So then we see this wave here, and by tomorrow afternoon, there's going to be some lingering stuff across the southeast, mainly in southern Georgia and Florida for tomorrow. By tomorrow evening through the morning, it'll still be pretty showery across the Gulf Coast. But yeah, and then by Wednesday morning, that's pretty much gone, except for still see continued unsettled weather across Florida in the form of showers and thunderstorms. And then you see this, see how this is moving east, like I told you, and it's dipping southward like this. So that's reinforcing the cold air. So this whole part, pretty much the eastern, almost half of the country, say east of the, plains here from like Nebraska, Dakotas, and all the way down to Texas. This whole area is going to be a little bit cooler than normal, at least for a day or two until this ridge moves eastward. But that's going to kind of get broken down too as this stronger system moves in across the area. So yeah, that's what we see out here. We just have this one left. We still have maybe a little energy left across South Florida from this old storm, but still unsettled across the Northeast. You'll probably still see some rain and storms here back in this area on Wednesday evening. And then you see this. So let's back up a little bit. So this is a little bit of a low pressure that comes into Southern California tomorrow evening. And this one looks fairly dry. This one's a lot stronger. You can see with those reds and all that vorticity, real strong. So that's going to bring in a lot of precip, especially for the northern half of the Rockies. And the southern half will see probably some spotty precipitation, but the energy's weaker, and the moisture's limited, so they probably won't see a whole lot in the way of precipitation with this system, but just a little bit. You see this red starts getting shunted towards the a little bit to the west over the plains on Wednesday, and you see that's the trend as we go through Thursday. So this whole part of the country will be kind of warm to hot, and you'll see the west will start cooling down a little bit. this southern system kind of weakens out, so that you can see the energy that came up, it just kind of goes over into Utah on the Four Corners area. So maybe a few showers, but it's really weak. This is what we're focused on, is this stuff across the north, and that's what really flattened out the ridge and came in pretty hot and heavy, you know. So a lot of showers, some thunderstorms, especially in the warm side of the system. So, and that'll cool it down a bit out here across the west in general. Not significantly cold. It'll definitely, you'll definitely feel the difference up here. But out here, instead of 90s and 100s, it'll probably back down into the 70s, 80s. Maybe some 90s will still linger back in Phoenix, but yeah. So it'll drop the temperatures maybe 10 to 15 degrees most spots. Yeah, and by Thursday morning, you see this thing's kind of slowed it apart, so that's going to keep the cold air kind of up here across the northeast and parts of the Great Lakes as we move through Thursday. But and it's just kind of slow to move. This is all the way through midday Friday, so this thing's slowly moving out, but it's going to be unsettled with rain up here through the end of the week. So that's kind of stalling that warm up. And now they're saying maybe the weekend. So you see this system, so it kind of skates, the northern border area. So I think the northern plains will see some precip. We'll have to. I can't remember. There it looks like there's a weak wave that comes across and moves across the central and southern plains here by Thursday. So that might kick off some showers and storms. It looks like it, and that'll go through Friday, although it's weakening. And you got another wave. You got, this is kind of a weak one, and then you got another one coming across on. This is kind of late Friday into Saturday, but that's as far as we're going to go. So that's going to keep the west kind of unsettled and cooling down, and that kind of, you see how now the flows almost become what we call zonal east to west, as it's kind of flattened out the ridge and this deep trough finally. So this is by Saturday, so that'll cool, that'll warm it up a little bit. And even though this little shot here might they're just never out of it up in Maine and Vermont, but and New Hampshire. But finally, maybe by the end of the weekend, they get a ridge out here, and towards next week, I'm not going to go that far out. I'm just kind of showing you what's going to happen, but and maybe they'll finally warm up by the end of the weekend. Because even on Saturday, this little shot right here may keep the cooler air in there, or at least keep it from warming up. It'll definitely keep it from warming up because the weather will be unsettled. And then this pattern looks like it's setting up for maybe a severe scenario again, maybe as we head into the weekend and to early next week for the plains. We'll have to watch that at least for a day or two. Yeah, but that's getting way out. That's a week out, so. But that's what's going on in the upper level. I already covered the precip for tonight. We'll just go into tomorrow. We'll skim through this pretty quick. Try to speed this along. So this is tomorrow. So let's go through tomorrow evening. They kind of backed off on the showers and storms here. They show a few trying to develop, maybe in Missouri and Kansas and back through Illinois. So, but it's so dry. There's no moisture. The Gulf's cut off. So most of it will be up around the low up here. It'll still be a little bit breezy around it. Probably not as windy as it was when it was back here, but gusting up to about 30 miles an hour, maybe 35 in places. Yeah, even hinting at some snow up in the UP on the backside on Tuesday night. So yeah, then you start seeing a little bit of precip trying to invade this Pacific Northwest. That'll probably pick up more on Wednesday. You see this, we got. Yeah, by tomorrow evening, it's going. You would just have Florida and parts of Georgia under showers and storms, and then as you head into Wednesday, maybe parts of Florida, and then we'll see this here. So this is that front. See, this is a front here, but it's kind of dry. It'll pick up a little moisture as it comes east through the Tennessee Valley, I guess you want to call that, Tennessee and northern Georgia, up to Virginia, the Virginias. I'll just call West Virginia and Virginia the Virginias, and then Pennsylvania and New York and to the northeast will be wet. So showers and thunderstorms along the front. Um, and then it looks like in response to this next system, you'll start seeing some southerly winds develop. Although it's still dry, nothing coming off the Gulf, but some breezy winds developing across the high plains, and all that wet weather starts coming, especially to the north. But even in the southern parts, like I told you, you might see a few showers, and it might be a little more widespread than what the model's showing here with that wave. And as we go into Wednesday night and Thursday, they're kind of hinting at maybe something developing. This could be some low-level jet forcing that happens at night along the low jet, so we might see some showers and storms developing across the plains, Oklahoma, Kansas, into Nebraska. So that looks like that's what that's looking like. Without looking at, typically you look at the 850 level to see that, um, and those are typically at night. Those will usually form late at night, near or around midnight, and go through the morning, and then kind of usually will fizzle out by morning. But sometimes, if they're strong enough, they'll hold together through the next day. Yeah, so yeah, and here's that next system brewing up on Thursday. You're seeing some, but it's moving. Like I said, it's kind of moving up into Canada. So not a lot once you get on Thursday. Most of it's going to be in the northern Rockies up in Montana. Still some stuff back in Seattle area. And then this brings a front in too back here. So we might see some showers and storms develop. But still, there's no Gulf moisture yet. This is all the way through Friday. So they're kind of showing maybe some spotty storms through the plains. I mean, there could be a couple severe, but they're moisture starved, so mostly dynamic driven. So yeah, and as we go through Friday, still it's trying to get a little moisture off the western side, but you still got this high pressure out over here, so it's kind of gonna keep the moisture at bay. But you'll have a little bit of thunderstorms out here through Midwest into the Ohio area, but most of the energy's up into Canada here. We totally didn't talk about up here, but after that system came through Wednesday and Thursday, it just spins up in there in the Northeast, like through the week, through Friday anyways. It'll stay unsettled until it dries out. So yeah, so that's the story. Is the Gulf moisture's cut off all week. Um, I can just look. See, now it's starting to open up on. Looks like maybe on Saturday into Sunday. So maybe over the weekend, yeah, and you start to see that too. All that that we really start getting some thunderstorm complexes developing, and you see that more on Sunday too. So the Gulf starts to open up a little bit. So maybe this weekend we'll see some severe weather out there across the plains and eastward. So something to keep an eye on. Otherwise, pretty quiet, convective wise for storms. They got a couple marginal risks, although from what I saw, maybe still Florida could be under the gun. But with how late it's getting to be, this stuff probably not much of a threat. So I'm not going to really discuss it too much. Tomorrow, like I said, they still got a marginal risk out here, and the models kind of show they might be real isolated. I think the biggest threat would be winds. With the lack of moisture, tornadoes are probably not going to happen, and hail is going to be hard pressed too. So, but you could get some of those with the drier low levels, some gusty downburst winds. Looks like a marginal risk too out over Florida with that energy that goes across them. So I can see that. That's for tomorrow, and then on Wednesday, they got a couple areas. This is along that front. Okay, it's still not a lot of moisture with it. And then up here across Montana with that next system. So probably more of a wind threat than anything. But yeah, I'm just not seeing it really for all the way through the week. Like I said, on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, with the moisture and the Gulf opening up, I could see maybe something developing out across the plains as these next systems come out off the Rockies and pick up the moisture, and the front kind of sweeps through. So, all right, I'll show you the temperatures real quick since I kind of mentioned that. So this is today. So yeah, pretty warm for most of the eastern or western 2/3 of the country, except for back across the northeast and even down into the parts of the south here. It was only in the 70s. So for tomorrow, it kind of warms up, but that next front kind of cools off the northern plains and back into Montana. So we'll see 70s and 60s and 50s farther north. So this will just stay cool through most of the week. You're starting to see it slowly warm up across the southeast and the mid-Atlantic, and yeah, I mean that front comes down here again, so it's kind of gonna keep the the warm air at bay, from like say Virginia north, Virginia northward is still gonna be, coolish, and that'll be the story back through here too. Still hot through the central plains and down. It'll be warming up across southeast. You can start seeing the west now by Wednesday, starting to cool off a little bit. Yeah, you're seeing like 78 out here in Reno and 96. So the temperatures are slowly retreating. And Thursday, yeah, definitely cooler across west. Still pretty warm with that ridge across the central plains, and then you still see that cooler air with that. And that was that other shot I told you that would kind of come down almost to the southeast by Thursday. So that's keeping it in the 50s, 60s, and 70s farther south. And then we'll just do Friday here. So yeah, I mean it's trying to warm up, but it's not going to do it until the weekend. Still kind of coolish, 60s and 70s back here. Still got the heat back here. It's relatively cooler back here. It's still in the upper 90s down the desert southwest. So that area, just like I said, maybe drop 5 to 10 degrees at the most. So yeah, that's your weather ahead. I mean, overall, I mean, there's a couple actives. There's some couple storms out there, but for springtime, there's not going to be a lot of severe weather really for this week. So maybe this weekend. So just keep your eyes and ears open as you head towards the end of the week, especially if you live you know, where they get severe weather all the time across the middle part of the country in May. Just keep your eyes and ears open, especially the weekend. So, hey, this is I appreciate y'all. Wickspan Ray out.